All right, yes, I'm from the Center for the Humanities and the Public Sphere. You can also refer to us as the Humanities Center. At the University of Florida, my name is Sophia Acord, and I'd like to begin by thanking Isabel for inviting me to join you all for Open Access Week again this year. I have the fun pleasure here of talking a bit provocatively about what else open access can mean in a really expansive sense of the term. And so in particular, I'm going to be presenting some examples to you all from what is becoming known as the digital humanities, a rather vague subfield that I will define on my next slide, in the hopes that these examples of what scholars can now do in a more open access friendly research and literature environment might provide some discussion for the rest of us about what the possibilities are for the future of research and scholarly communication in other disciplines. So, I should say I am a sociologist here at UF. I have a particular research interest in the impact of digital technologies on how scholars do their research, on how they collaborate, and how they communicate their work, including with the public. So what I'm talking about is stemming from a larger project that's been going on since 2005, funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. So what are the digital humanities? I will adopt the definition from the University of Virginia's annual Scholarly Communication Institute to say that they are the humanities for and in a digital age. What does that mean? It means scholars from various aspects of the humanities, history, archaeology, English, foreign languages and literatures, religion, philosophy, parts of the qualitative social sciences, etc., who are interested in applying new digital tools to do their research, are interested in how digital technologies enable new forms of knowledge production that both complement and expand upon our existing books and journal articles. I think it's interesting why a lot of fields in the humanities, in particular media studies and rhetoric, are doing some of this experimentation. Is there an elective affinity? If you have a research interest in how texts generate meaning, are you interested in thinking about how that's impacted in the digital age? I don't know, a question. And I'd like to have a big disclaimer up there on the bottom of my slide that I am only speaking about individual experiments. Every scholarly subfield and field and discipline has its own culture, its own ways of communicating, its own forms of data, etc. And so in no way am I at all being prescriptive in this talk. So I'll begin with some of the more traditional examples, traditional insofar as I'm talking about peer-reviewed, final, formal, archival publication. We are seeing a lot of interesting open access peer-reviewed journals popping up in the humanities. I have some examples here of those being published at the University of Florida. African Studies Quarterly, published by our Center of African Studies. Image Text, published in our English department. It's important to note that both of these publications include work that is highly visual, has multimedia aspects, all things not possible in a print journal. I know that the sciences have been doing digital publication for many years because of the same reason, the growth of visualization tools and technologies. Finally, our UF Journal of Undergraduate Research, I understand, a few months ago has now moved to the UF Institutional Repository and is being published there. So I think there are some really interesting possibilities for collaborations between scholar editors and our library here as publishing partners. We are also finally seeing some move on the digital monograph front, although we are really nowhere near a tipping point for many reasons that I won't go into today. But I will present some examples. Gutenberg E is a partnership between the American Historical Association and Columbia University Press. The AHA, the association, has given out prizes for books in certain areas, and as a recipient of those prizes, you have the privilege of having your monograph being made and available in a multimedia, digital, open access form, which is very exciting. Also, some interesting work going on around enhanced publications in the humanities. What do I mean by enhanced? I mean live footnotes. So you can see that this diagram of what enhanced publication could look like up above. You have books on their own websites down the middle. You can query across those on the left. And on the right, you can reach out. You can link to data sites and bases and data resources all over the internet. It looks kind of like a journal, actually, interestingly enough. So I'll be interested in seeing how this research progresses. Now, everything I've been talking about so far is really the yin of open access, this peer-reviewed, formal, and archival publication. I think it's also interesting to look at the yang. And for this yin-yang analogy, I'd like to thank Stephen Wheatley of the ACLS. What is the yang? It is everything else we produce as scholars. It is our data, our archival literature, our GRE literature, book reviews, conversations, in vitro discussions, early drafts, etc. How can we make all of these things available when it serves our purposes in our disciplines and in our careers? So I'm going to give a few examples of how this is happening in the humanities. Open archives, I think, being the most obvious. The availability of large collections of digitized texts, artifacts, sound files, images, etc., that are marked up, that enable computational research and searching. You may have come across the term cultural genomics. Literally, open data enables new kinds of research methods. This also relates to scholarly editions. Scholarly editions are very common, prestigious archival publication forms in the humanities, where you bring together a curated body of texts in your areas with critical analysis and work, while in an online forum, in an open access online forum, you can have digital archives that are also critical editions, that are also translations. So I have an example here from Chopin. You can see that you can compare the variants across different manuscripts in the composer's hands with finalized scores. You can view the critical notes of the author. Let's see if my little... There's the notes up there. And you can search across the archive while also searching through the edition and the monograph. So we're really blurring the boundaries of what counts as a scholarly product and how we can integrate data into those products in an open access way. Very similarly, alternative forms of knowledge making are available once you have all of these open access materials out there. So we're seeing a lot of folks playing with online exhibitions. I'd like to highlight one that should be coming out anytime soon through our Digital Library of the Caribbean, in which the University of Florida Digital Library Center is a partner. Haiti and Island Luminous, which interweaves openly available digital resources with scholarly critique. What else can you do once you have all of these things out there? Well, again, new types of research. So this is a project at the Institute for Advanced Technology in the Humanities at the University of Virginia. Scholars, some scholars in archaeology and classics who study Rome actually do study individual buildings in Rome down to the scale from archaeological digs, etc. Well, now you can publish the building that you study. You can have it peer-reviewed using GIS and 3D visualization technologies. You can create a scale model of Rome. And so for other scholars coming through, this is a research portal. You can now walk through the streets of Rome and say, oh, I didn't realize you could see the Colosseum from City Hall. That must mean that what I knew about this particular magistrate in the city from the archive is a little different. So you can actually ask and answer new kinds of research questions in these open access digital environments. Blogs, I have to mention them. We're all talking about them, and I think frequently in a very dismissive way. But in some cases, some really interesting scholarly discussion that is tied to specifically established and vetted scholarly societies and bodies. In these cases, blogs are becoming a real forum for intellectual work to get done. I use this example of Points, the blogs of the Alcohol and Drugs History Society, in which we have several active UF faculty members. And when I started to think about how these folks are using blogs to explore new ideas in their fields, to share resources, etc., it made me think of a conversation I had a few years ago with a molecular biologist about the origin of the C. elegans field. And I have my quote up there from this interview. And this biologist was telling me about when this field was very much in incubation. People are faxing each other things. They have community blackboards. No one has a breadth of expertise. There's certainly not a journal in which it makes natural sense to publish in yet. So where can this communication take place? Well, in sometimes these innovative social forums. Could blogs serve this purpose? Maybe. Maybe. There's this interesting article a few months ago in the Chronicle, which basically gives credit to a series of blogs and prominent bloggers in the field for incubating the discussion that then led to the creation of a new subfield, which is called speculative realism. So some questions about, again, how to think more expansively about what we can make open access. Well, as long as we're all out there, and we're blogging and talking to each other, open peer review. I know Nature in 2006 experimented with open peer review and largely called the experiment not a success, citing in particular that the comments generated through open peer review were not any more helpful than what had already been solicited through the traditional blind peer review process. Well, the experiments in the humanities have been much more successful. They are in particularly defined fields like media studies. I think that matters, but it's still been very hard to solicit comments and very time-consuming for authors and reviewers and editors to pour through those, but it is possible. I'm showing you an example now from Media Commons Press, which is an activity from the Institute for the Future of the Book. This is a monograph by a media studies scholar at Pomona College, Kathleen Fitzpatrick, entitled Planned Obsolescence. And the platform you're seeing uses a technology called Comment Press, which is a plugin for the traditional blogging software, WordPress. Well, as long as you're all out there reading each other's work and commenting on it, should we be authoring in crowdsourced manners? I in no way implying that this is the future. This is a crowdsourced book that was overseen by Dan Cohen at the George Mason University George Mason University Center for History and New Media. Thank you. All of these acronyms. He did cite that it took a tremendous amount of time to pour through all of the contributions, to sort them out into a narrative, to the tangents from the main focus of the publication. But what about a model like this for textbooks, for open access textbooks that we might want to provide to our students? I don't know. Again, a proposition for a conversation. Data, also really important when we think about open access. Open access to what? Not only our formal archival publications. I completely understand that there are all sorts of very good reasons why scholars share or do not share their data in the ways that they do. But one of those reasons no longer need be the means to do so. So this is an example of Katohoyek, which is an ongoing excavation in Turkey. At the end of every day or every 2 days, they upload their new excavation database online, and scholars can go running with it. There's attributions written in to the database so that the data can be cited. Attribution may be different from credit, however, because the data in that case are not peer-reviewed. How can we get credit for peer-reviewed open access data? The Mellon Foundation is working with Indiana University, experimenting with the Evia Digital Archive for ethnographic film, ethnomusicological film and video. So in this model, an ethnomusicologist can petition to spend a summer fully funded, annotating their field video, turning it into a comprehensive curated resource that can be used by other scholars in the field. That package of field video is then stringently peer-reviewed, and when it's finally successfully revised and enters into the archive, that is a publication for the scholar, and they provide documentation for your institution as to the rigor of that peer review process and contribution. So we have all of these things out there on the internet in a variety of forms and places. How do we locate and filter everything? This is the big question. The Sloan Foundation has just funded the George Mason University Center for History and New Media to find out, to try to develop a tool called Press Forward, which will, as busy scholars, enable us to filter and find all of these things from a variety of areas. So I think that this is a bit maybe beyond the yang, because things are only meaningful to us if they fit in our everyday consumption practices. I'll be interested to see what happens with this. Now, of course, there is a giant elephant in the room here. When we talk about providing open access to the yang of scholarly work, there are a lot of questions. First, amongst these, of course, are peer review, attribution, and credit. And I mean credit in the sense of tenure and promotion, advancing your career. Also, the right of an individual to do their work the way they want to do their work, and to not participate in anything that they don't need to participate in to further their career and their research projects. Also, of course, time, money, skills, budgets, resources, institutional assistance. Who's going to be doing all these things? Because scholars are already being asked to do more of everything. I think that's something that we all feel. So who can we rely upon? Are we going to see more parallel tracks appearing at universities for data curators, for specialist librarians, et cetera? I think in an open access universe, we'll have the opportunity to think more expansively about how we train our graduate students and the kinds of professions and job paths that they might go into that involve research and absolutely require a PhD and a disciplinary expertise, but also knowledge of this other universe, the open access library digital publishing universe. And finally, and these are some questions that are very specific to the humanities, but again might indicate questions for other fields. What does it mean to be doing this kind of work around data curation, around online exhibitions, open peer review, et cetera? Are these things tools, or are they scholarship? Are they the formation of scholarly arguments, or are they providing a design for arguments to be provided by other people? How can we articulate the way in which knowledge is being produced in these new ways? So we would like to begin that conversation at UF. We have the Humanities Center has some funding from the Office of Research and the Class Dean's Office. We are working in close partnership with the University of Florida Digital Library Center, and we would like to invite you and your colleagues to join the conversation. We have a variety of events in the works for spring 2012 to go along with our Rehumanizing the University speaker series. To be involved, please see our Digital Humanities resource page on our website. Please feel free to contact me, and thank you very much.